I just told her I loved her, said, sweetie, you're not coming back from this.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the showbiz romances that prove not even fame and fortune is enough to prevent tragedy.
I don't think that that's possible. He was my person.
Number 20, Steve Owen and Terry Owen.
Have a look at this Sheila. She's just beautiful. Next thing, the crocodile's trying to kill me, so I better concentrate on what I'm doing. And I kept watching her. Sure enough, she stayed back. We started talking about some really hot wildlife issues.
The Australian conservationist may have been an unlikely TV star, but his endearing personality and unwavering dedication to all things wildlife soared him to international stardom in the 1990s via his show The Crocodile Hunter. Steve Irwin's passion for wildlife and its conservation was shared by his wife and co-star Terry. Unfortunately, in 2006, at only 44 years old, a stingray injury resulted in his death. Though their story together ended, Steve's legacy lives on in their children, Bindi and Robert, who proudly took up their parents' line of work. Terry had said that she may never remarry and that she's okay with having already had her happily ever after with Steve.
Can you see another Steve Irwin? I just can't. I'd be like, I love that you're a librarian and the Dewey Decimal System is cool, but I gotta go jump a crocodile.
Yeah. Number 19, Patton Oswalt and Michele McNamara. Comedian and character actor Patton Oswalt married true crime author Michele McNamara in 2005. The two were heavyweights in their respective careers.
Michele would actually go to the crime scene and walk the case.
Geographic connections, DNA profiles, genealogy websites. The first time she called me, I thought, she knows her stuff.
McNamara's life work was a book about the Golden State Killer, a serial murderer who preyed on California in the 1970s and 80s. Sadly, McNamara passed away suddenly in 2016 before she could finish her manuscript.
And it's happening right as she's putting all this new stuff together, and then it's just cut off. And it's this, it lands like such a, for me, obviously, but it lands like a body blow.
Oswalt worked to ensure that McNamara's efforts were not in vain. He oversaw the completion and publication of her book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, later expressing that finishing the book was as painful as it was rewarding.
Michele was so complex and surprising a person. It's impossible for me to ever just predict what she would have thought. She would have thought something that I could not have imagined or anticipated. That's what was so amazing about her.
Number 18, Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney. Paul McCartney met Linda Eastman when he was still in the Beatles, and she was a photographer of famous musicians.
Well, I was in England taking photographs for a book, and I thought I'd like to photograph the Beatles and Stevie Winwood, who's a great favourite of mine. And we happened to meet down in a club. It's one of them.
He flung himself down a club.
The two married in 1969. Once the Beatles broke up, Paul and Linda fronted a pop band all their own. They released several incredible hit records under the name Paul McCartney and Wings.
Only my love holds the other key.
The couple created a beautiful family and spent much of their lives together as champions of animal rights. But Linda and Paul's story came to an end in the late 1990s. She was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1995, and she passed away 3 years later at the age of 56.
It's very easy to live in the shadow, isn't it? Did you feel a necessity to break out?
No, I'm not really worried about that living in the shadow. I love life and I'll just have a good time. Shadow or no shadow.
Number 17, Grace Kelly and Prince Rainier III of Monaco. If any Hollywood actress was fit to be a princess, it was Grace Kelly. Her dignified and chic on-screen persona made her marriage to Prince Rainier of Monaco seem all the more like a fairy tale romance.
Nobody talks of anything but the wedding. Far from the pumpkin coach of a Cinderella is the glamour of the great occasion. Yet all who love romance have made it their own treasured occasion.
Their lavish wedding captured the world's attention. She never made a real return to movies after the marriage, instead prioritizing her duties as princess.
I would like to be remembered as trying to do my job well, of being understanding, and kind.
In 1982, Kelly suffered a cerebral hemorrhage while driving, and she and her daughter Stephanie were injured in a car accident. Both were lucky enough to survive the crash, but while Kelly was expected to make a full recovery, she was struck with a second fatal hemorrhage at the hospital. Rainier never remarried, and when he died in 2005, he was buried beside his deceased wife.
Pretty obvious that he was deeply affected, and he wasn't quite the same man as he was before the accident.
Number 16, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. With so many marriages comes a lot of heartbreak. After 2 divorces, Liz Taylor's third husband, Mike Todd, devastatingly died in a plane crash. Then there was her tempestuous marriage to Richard Burton that looms largest over her romantic history.
I think having a fight, an out-and-out, outrageous, ridiculous fight, is one of the greatest exercises in marital togetherness.
They were married in 1964, divorced in 1974, and then remarried a year later in 1975, only to re-divorce the next year. They were as electric off-screen as they were on, and the passion in their relationship inevitably destroyed it.
We loved each other almost too much. It sounds silly.
No, it doesn't.
But it was so intense that it was almost abnormal.
Taylor remarried twice more, but there was no getting over Burton, who died in 1984. Their former houses in Puerto Vallarta are still a tourist attraction for visiting lovers, with the bridge that connected them dubbed the Lover's Arch. Number 15, Selena Quintanilla Perez and Chris Perez. The story of Selena's life is tragic enough. She was only 23 years old and on the cusp of worldwide superstardom when she was murdered by her friend and business colleague, Yolanda Saldivar. The performer left behind her husband, musician, and Selena y los Dinos guitarist, Chris Perez. Their love story was full of obstacles, including the disapproval of Selena's father.
He said, he's like, whatever it is, stops now. And being that I was taken aback, that could have been an opportunity to try to, to say something and be open. But the only words that came out were like, okay.
Selena and Perez eloped, estranging them from her family for a time. But tensions had eased by the time of her death, and Selena was about to release an English crossover album when she passed away. Their story has since been immortalized in films, print, and TV.
I know why they all love you so much.
Oh yeah, why?
Because I love you too.
Number 14, Keanu Reeves and Jennifer Syme. Keanu Reeves' easy and warm demeanour can't have come easy if you know what he's been through.
There's a sort of mythology that surrounds you, that you're sad. That there's this whole sad Keanu thing. That you're somebody who carries quite a lot of burdens around with you.
He and his former partner Jennifer Syme were both waist deep in the entertainment industry. Reeves was and is a movie star, and Syme was an assistant who had worked closely with director David Lynch for nearly a decade. Their 2-year relationship was hit hard by their daughter's stillbirth. The grief was too much and they ended their relationship. However, soon afterwards they got back together. Unfortunately, their reconnection didn't get the time it deserved because in 2001, Syme was killed in a car accident. Reeves marks the tragedy as a major turning point in his life.
You'll go on and have a beautiful life, the one you deserve.
I only want you.
You have me forever.
Number 13, Spencer Tracy and Katherine Hepburn. It was a known secret that the two frequent co-stars were lovers for over 2 decades. However, the circumstances that never allowed them to be open about their relationship were complicated.
The Hollywood press and at that time the gossip columnists, they let you alone.
They let us alone because I think they thought that we made a great deal of effort not to sort of parade ourselves around.
Old Hollywood studios maintained tight control over bad publicity. Spencer Tracy, a lifelong Catholic, refused to divorce his estranged wife, who refused right back. Hepburn became Tracy's live-in nurse at the end of his life, caring for him in his final days. However, his legal marriage meant that once Tracy passed away in 1967, respect had to be upheld. Hepburn, who found his body, was left out of media reports of his death and did not go to his funeral out of courtesy for his family.
I was not his wife.
Has there ever been a man since Spencer Tracy who really interested you?
No, but I mean, then I was old, so it didn't matter.
Number 12, Brittany Murphy and Simon Monjack. The deaths of Brittany Murphy and her husband, British screenwriter Simon Monjack, have captivated and disturbed fans for years.
He was mysterious in the way of like, who are you? But we didn't know what happened. All we knew is that this young 32-year-old Hollywood starlet had suddenly died.
Rumours about Murphy's health and substance use disorder, as well as allegations about Monjack's past and his being a controlling husband, ran rampant. When Monjack died a few months later, however, it only reignited speculation, this time about everything from medical conditions to toxic mold in the couple's home. A 2021 documentary was released, but it didn't do much to illuminate the public about one of Hollywood's biggest modern-day tragedies.
I can't say why or what happened in that house. It became a really awful tragedy that should never have happened. But to the reason why it happened is very difficult to state.
Number 11, Laurence Olivier and Vivian Leigh. Two-time Oscar winner Vivian Leigh met Laurence Olivier on the set of Fire Over England. Their love affair was marked by career highs, lows, infidelity, and mental health crisis. While the two were purportedly irrevocably in love, Leigh's bipolar disorder and Olivier's affairs led to heavy emotional disturbances for them both.
He couldn't go on, it was exhausting him. Suddenly being awakened in the middle of the night by being hit in the face with a towel or something.
They were divorced in 1960, although it was said their marriage was over long before then. Leigh died of tuberculosis in 1967. Despite being divorced and having found new life partners by then, Olivier rushed over to see her, even though she was already gone.
Whatever you read, he spent a whole 6 hours, during which time he was quite hysterical.
He was shattered. Jack rang him up and Leigh went round, then saw the body, and he was absolutely shattered.
Number 10, Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio. Blind dates can be disasters waiting to happen, but when the biggest movie star met the biggest sports star on one such date in the early 1950s, the world seemed to stop.
He understood some things about me, and I understood some things about him, and we based our marriage on it.
Joe DiMaggio and Marilyn Monroe's whirlwind romance was the stuff of Hollywood dreams. Their deep passion, however, belied a tense and sometimes violent marriage. DiMaggio was reportedly jealous of Monroe's status as a cinematic sex symbol.
Oh, so you were around during that business that caused all the fuss with the skirt blowing up on the...
got very upset about it.
Did he really, or was that just...
Really?
Despite divorcing several years before, DiMaggio claimed the star's body after her death in 1962 and even helped with funeral arrangements. As the famous story goes, he would then send roses to her grave for 2 decades afterwards. A witness who was with him when he died even said DiMaggio's last words were about Monroe.
I call him in my book the demon lover, because once Marilyn dies, he remains utterly devoted and faithful to her.
Number 9, Heath Ledger and Michelle Williams. Michelle Williams and Heath Ledger met and began dating while playing a married couple in Brokeback Mountain.
That was happy at work.
For a reason we both understand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You fell in love on that movie.
I did.
The couple soon moved in together and welcomed their daughter to the world. In late 2007, however, they broke up. And not long after that, Ledger suddenly passed away, mere months after completing his work on The Dark Knight. Though the two weren't together at the time of his death, his loss had a profound effect on Williams.
I can find meanings in things and people and relationships that have sprung up and friendships that have strengthened. I can find a lot of meaning in that, but not in why.
Both actors in this Hollywood power couple were famously hesitant about putting their personal lives on display for the public, but the ensuing media circus surrounding the end of his life, as well as rumours about what may have caused it, brought unwanted attention to the details of their relationship.
Understand why people are so curious
about
your tragedy, the tragedy that happened to you.
Do I understand? Sure. Yeah, I do. I relate to it.
Number 8, Pierce Brosnan and Cassandra Harris. Before he became the face of James Bond in the 1990s, Pierce Brosnan was actually married to a former Bond actress, Cassandra Harris, had appeared as a glamorous countess romanced by Roger Moore in 1981's For Your Eyes Only.
What exactly did Columbo whisper to you?
That you're a spy. to find out more about you.
And have you?
Have I ever?
Harris passed away in 1991 from ovarian cancer at the age of 43. The actors had one son together, and after her death, Brosnan adopted Harris's 2 children from a previous marriage. Brosnan remarried in 2001. However, he is still a devoted advocate for ovarian cancer awareness. In 2013, Harris's daughter and Brosnan's stepdaughter Charlotte ended up passing away from the same disease.
To watch someone you love have his or her life eaten away bit by bit by this insidious disease, that kind of sorrow becomes an indelible part of your psyche.
Number 7, Clark Gable and Carole Lombard. She was the blonde bombshell with a wicked sense of humour, and he was the virile leading man of swashbucklers and rom-coms alike. Together they were a power couple. Though Gable had been romantically linked with many actresses, his relationship and 3-year marriage to Lombard remains one for the books.
They were 2 of the most beautiful people in Hollywood, and they were married, and they had this supposed idyllic life, so I think that they epitomize the glamour of a lost time, like a pre-World War II innocence.
Things were sadly cut short in 1942. Lombard was on a tour selling war bonds when she, her mother, and Gable's press agent died in a violent airplane crash. His wife's untimely death spurred him to join the war effort, and he became a pilot in the Army Air Forces before making a return to films. Longtime friends would say he was never the same after losing Lombard.
Carole Lombard was the love of Gable's life, and so she was the woman that he could never have again. He was the woman he could look for and try to replace and try to possess, but he could never replace her because there was only one Carole Lombard.
Number 6, Patrick Swayze and Lisa Niemi. He was easily one of the most charming leading men of the 80s and 90s. Patrick Swayze was a heartthrob for millions, but only Lisa Niemi got to call him hers. The two were aspiring dancers when they married in 1975 and were together until his heartbreaking death from pancreatic cancer in 2009.
This journey so far has been a journey, and she's helped me get through it, whether it takes getting me angry, whether it's calming me down, whether it's firing me up, whether it's inspiring me.
Until the end, the two were devoted to each other. Niemi took charge of Swayze's care. She kept track of his medical records and medications and made specifically prepared meals to keep his weight up. As a licensed pilot, she even flew Swayze to his cancer treatments. Though she has since remarried, Niemi maintains that Swayze's death wasn't the end of their love story.
Just because somebody's gone doesn't mean you fall out of love. And my wise friend said that's because love comes from the same well.
Number 5, Lea Michele and Cory Monteith. Glee was a cultural phenomenon with a dedicated fandom. So when it was announced that co-stars and on-screen lovers, Lea Michele and Cory Monteith, were dating in real life, fans were immediately invested. For them, it felt like they had followed the relationship through the characters they played.
I'm forever yours, faithfully.
Losing Monteith so suddenly in 2013 was a crushing blow to Gleeks everywhere, and we can't even imagine the pain Michele went through. Monteith was only 31 but had struggled with substance use disorder for most of his adult life. In the series' 5th season, the show aired an entire episode dedicated to the death of his character Finn Hudson, which served as a stand-in for a public memorial for the actor who played him.
Go to the ends of the earth for you, to make you feel my love.
Number 4, Gene Wilder and Gilda Radner. The former SNL cast member and Willy Wonka star were both high-profile celebrities when they met on the set of Hanky Panky in 1981. Gilda Radner and Gene Wilder married in 1984 and were by all accounts crazy about each other.
To me, it's irresistible. A funny man is irresistible more than any looks, more than any
She was always a sucker for a big laugh.
A sucker for a laugh.
After the couple's several unsuccessful attempts to have children, Radner experienced pain and fatigue that went misdiagnosed. It took almost a year for Radner to be diagnosed with ovarian cancer that would later kill her. Wilder dedicated himself to advocacy about the disease, opening up foundations in her name. While they were only together for about 8 years, these two comedic geniuses lived and loved enough for a lifetime.
I don't know if you are going to make masterpieces,
on the movie, but you are going to have a masterpiece in real life.
Oh, oui.
Number 3, Liam Neeson and Natasha Richardson. Like many of the couples on this list, these two esteemed actors met when they became co-stars. Liam Neeson, the stage actor turned action hero, met Natasha Richardson, the product of one of England's foremost acting dynasties, while working on Broadway in the early 1990s.
She and I were like Astaire and Rogers. We had just this wonderful kind of free dance on stage every night.
They married and had 2 sons. In 2009, Richardson injured her head during a skiing lesson. Although she walked away from the incident seemingly unscathed, she subsequently passed away due to internal bleeding in the head. Neeson at least derives comfort in the fact that her organs were donated to keep 3 other people alive.
Her heart, her kidneys, and her liver. But,
that must give you a good feeling.
It's terrific, yeah. It's terrific. And I think she would be very thrilled and pleased with that too, actually.
Number 2, Meryl Streep and John Cazale. John Cazale, who gave stunning and subtle performances in some of the greatest movies of the decade, was an acting powerhouse. In 1976, he began seeing his very talented co-star and up-and-coming actress named Meryl Streep.
Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above.
Just as she was making her big break in movies like Julia and The Deer Hunter, Streep was going through an impossibly painful situation. Cazale was dying of lung cancer. Streep took all the time off that they could afford, given the mounting medical bills and her budding fame, to care for him. When Cazale passed on in 1978, it profoundly changed her as a person and artist.
He was lucky enough to have as the last vision of his life Meryl's lovely face.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1, Christopher Reeve and Dana Reeve. In 1995, the Superman actor's life changed forever when he was thrown from a horse. Christopher Reeve stopped breathing for several minutes before being revived, and when he awoke in hospital, he was paralyzed from the neck down.
The very bottom of my left foot, I can feel when somebody touches it lightly. When somebody touches it lightly, and I have feeling in my shoulders. And of course, my head and neck and all of that, my head is very sensitive.
Initially, he expressed to his wife, Dana Morosini, that he didn't want his condition to become a burden on her, but she supported him through rehabilitation, and his grief over his disability soon transformed into a renewed sense of purpose.
I think this is a real test of the wedding vows. He's my partner. He's my other half, literally. It's not within the realm of my imagination to do anything less than what I'm doing.
They turned to humanitarianism, which they continued until Christopher's death in 2004, and Dana's own death from lung cancer only 2 years later. Which of these celebrity love stories had you heard before? Tell us in the comments.
The notion that your life can change in an instant.
I know I got kind of obsessed with that for a while, before and after. I mean, a lot of things died.